All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Spots of Love podcast here in Barney History Fans. I am your host, Karan. I've always said every time I start this podcast, and I'm really excited to be able to do this and talk with many different people about this character that we all have grown up with or have grown to love and appreciate. And that's no different today. I have a lot of people that's lined up here for the podcast that I'm really, really, really excited about. A lot of people that I think other people here in this group would be excited to see and hear from. And that's no different today. Today, I have another Barney fan, like I have been interviewing here. And I'm really excited to be able to talk to her and hear her story and her experiences. And so I'm not going to waste any time. I'm just going to go ahead and bring her right in. I would like everybody to welcome Sara. Sara, how are you?
Doing good. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good. Like I said on the intro, there's a lot of people that's lined up over these next couple of weeks that I'll be interviewing that I'm really excited about. You're one of those people. When I'm involved in the Barney community, I kind of talk to a set group of people, and I don't really get a chance to talk to people outside of that. And doing this podcast, I get that opportunity. So I'm really, really excited to be able to talk to you. I've seen your name around, but being able to actually talk to you is really exciting for me. So I'm glad that you're here, and thank you for signing up to do this.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
For sure. As we get started here, I kind of ask the same question all the time to just get started. What was your introduction to Barney? Do you remember when you first found out about Barney or were introduced to Barney? What was that like for you?
So, funny story, I actually asked my mom about that. And what's really funny is the only thing that we got was that around the time I was born, I think it was around when season 3 was going on. Mm-hmm. And we just happened to have PBS Kids on, and Barney was on TV. And that's just kind of how I got started. We weren't really exactly sure how I really got into Barney so much. That's just, He was on TV, and it was history as it was.
Oh, that's awesome. Do you remember kind of what that was like? Do you remember, maybe a better question, what caught your attention? Obviously you turn to this channel, you see this show that you haven't seen before to this point. Was there anything specific that you remember or you can think of maybe now when you think about Barney that made you want to watch?
I'm not exactly sure. I was pretty little, so I don't really remember a whole lot with that. I'm sure a lot of it was Barney's size, probably, just the way that he looked, which is really ironic. I tell people, maybe this is a little bit of a tangent, but I tell people that I really didn't grow up with Sesame Street. I grew up with Barney, and I say maybe it was because of the yellow bird, which doesn't make sense because he was almost the same size as Barney, but yeah, no, I really don't remember exactly what drew me into liking Barney so much. I just know that I enjoyed Barney quite a bit when I was a kid. I had literally just about Barney everything when I was a kid.
Do you still have, so saying you had almost anything Barney, do you still have a pretty decent collection, or did those things do you get kind of rid of those things and now don't have too much of it?
Yeah, so unfortunately, when I was about 4th or 5th grade, maybe actually around 3rd, 4th grade, somewhere in that region, it was right around the time that my parents were getting divorced. It was at a point in my life where I thought that I was too old for Barney. And so we actually had a really decently sized collection of Barney videos. So like the Backyard Gang, first generation, and the second generation as well. I told my mom I didn't want any of them anymore. Mm-hmm. The only ones that we kept were the holiday ones, so like the Halloween party, the Christmas ones, stuff like that. Yeah. And then just a lot of my other Barney stuff. I mean, I had a Barney beach towel, I had a Barney swimsuit, I had Barney pajamas, Barney slippers, stuff like that. So a lot of other like Barney toys, like the magic banjo, stuff like that. Yeah, so like I said, a lot of that, when we were having a sale to move, when my parents were splitting, a lot of my Barney stuff went into that pile.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I don't really have a lot of that stuff anymore. There's some stuff that I do have, and there's some stuff that I was able to get back through like Goodwill and stuff like that. And my brother has one that he never went through that with Barney. He's always stuck with Barney. And sometime after we did all of that and we got moved into the house here that we've lived in ever since, it's kind of been where he's wanted the Barney videos again. And so a lot of the stuff that we've gotten back of Barney videos, especially the ones that are Actimates compatible, because my brother wanted an Actimates Barney for his birthday one year, and so we had to get him that and the videos, and he's just loved it.
Awesome. You know, I went through that. I didn't go through the phase of growing out of Barney, which is weird. I'm 30 now, and I watched Barney from the moment I was able to pay attention to it all the way until it went off air. And I have daughters now, and they. My youngest, the 2-year-old, is a huge fan of Barney, just like I was. So she watches it all the time. But I did go through this phase of with all my stuffed toys where I was like, I don't think these are ever going to be worth anything. And so I just got rid of them all. And now we're in this world where there's a new series coming out, but all of those old things that I would have had from the 90s are worth something that not necessarily to sell anymore, but just to keep and have in your collection, because some of those things are hard to come by. And so I'm kind of sad that I was like 14 or 15 when I decided to do that. And so I'm kind of sad that I got rid of a lot of those things. But I started a collection 2 years ago again, trying to get all the things that I used to own or some that I never had a chance to own, or rare items, start to collect those. And so that's what you see behind me, is a very small collection in comparison to some other fans, but starting somewhere. So we had that in common, where we just kind of was like, okay, well, we don't really need these things anymore. Let's get rid of them. You talked about your parents getting divorced, and that was a hard time for you. Did you know, Barney for a lot of us was kind of a safe space for us. Did you, in that moment, was Barney one of those characters that you kind of turned to that helped you through that? Or you said you were kind of at that point where you were kind of feeling like you were a bit old for it. Was he not a character then that would have resonated with you at that time?
Yeah, probably not in that moment. I think, like I said, there was just a lot going on. And there's just quite a bit. There's a lot that I don't remember from that period. I was not even 10 when that happened. So, yeah, so it was, literally like more than half of my life, I've just been so used to it. And, but there were other times, even like more so nowadays, where Barney has kind of been a solace for me. Just kind of going through a lot of life changes, a lot of difficulties and stuff like that, where, like I said, it's more now that I'm in my 20s, it's kind of where Barney has kind of been that one that's kind of helped me. And what's kind of amusing, as I mentioned with my wanting to distance myself from Barney, was about a few years later down the road, when I was old enough to stay home by myself and everything, like when I didn't have school. It's funny because that era of Barney, when they were at the park, so like season through the end, 7 through the end, that's actually where I kind of got back into Barney. I wasn't too fond of his voice. No offense to Dean Went. I have grown to like his iteration of Barney, but yeah, so I would actually watch it just about every day that I was able to stay home from school. And it's funny because I don't remember if I watched it on the day, but I definitely remember watching the seasons with Riff.
Yeah.
And I remember just loving Riff. And I feel like I understand why a lot of folks our age don't necessarily care for him. He was definitely added on, and he was, you know, kind of the odd one out, and kind of just created for the purpose that Hit wanted. But I think he was actually a pretty cool character. I think there was a lot going on for him. And and also kind of helps that I'm a music person. So him being in music definitely helped with that.
Yeah, well, you know, that's the thing that I wish they didn't do with Riff, was like that musical arc, because when you look at Barney, it was music anyway, right? It's what they did. BJ was kind of that character who was in the band who did those kind of things. But I, like you, I love Riff still to this day. I like when things change, and so I remember back when season 10 aired, and it was the 2 episodes, and I was a lot older. I was way past the age range for Barney, but I liked that it was a double thing, because to me I felt like I was getting twice as many episodes, kind of thing, even though they were very short. I liked that I got more content. I also loved the addition of Riff. I've told a I don't know if I told the story on this podcast before. I feel like I maybe have, but I had a dream one time that there was a new dinosaur added to Barney, and I could hear the voice that, it sounds weird, but I could hear the voice that would be what Riff's voice is now, but I didn't see the dinosaur. So I remember seeing the Let's Make Music DVD it was actually Let's Make Music and Let's Go to the Firehouse. So I was like a year removed before even realizing that Riff was in the show. And I saw both of those with him on the front. And I just remember watching Let's Make Music the first time, and it was almost like that deja vu thing that you have sometimes where you feel like I've seen this before when Riff came on. I like when things change, so I like the addition of Riff. Like you said, I understand there's some fans who grew up with that very early Barney, the classic Bob West and all those guys. Even one of the writers, Steve White, wasn't fond of Riff. He had a different idea for a new type of dinosaur character that I hope I can talk to him about on this podcast at some point.
That'd be so cool.
What I think with Riff, what would have worked, I think, better is them leaning into his invention side of things, right? He was also very scientific and like to build and invent things. That could have been something brand new that you would have been able to dive a little bit deeper into that, with aside from the music thing, because music was already an element that was there. It wasn't new. But his invention side, I feel like they kind of just he started to blend in with the other dinosaurs to where he didn't really have his own personality, which I was a little upset with. But I love to hear that like there's someone else out there who appreciates Riff as the character. I just wish that they would have, like you said, executed him just a little bit better in a way to make him stand alone. He could work as a new character to Barney if they took the time, and it wasn't just how they did it of just like, okay, here's a new dinosaur. And I think that's where they kind of dropped the ball on that. But I was born a year after Barney premiered on PBS. So I was born in 93. And so I obviously grew up, my prime years were the prime years of Barney. But I still love the park seasons. I still love Dean Wint and Carrie Stinson and those guys. Obviously, some of the performances won't match what David Joyner and Bob West and those guys did, but you can't, right? When they set a precedent that high, it's hard for anybody to come in and match that and actually excel it from where it was at. David Joyner set the bar at 100 when he popped out, so it's very hard to excel above that. Same with Bob West. But you have to appreciate those guys for the time that they put in. And Carrie Stinson and Dean Wint were there far longer than Bob West and David Joyner was. And so it's cool to hear someone else appreciate those shows for what they are. I know as adults now we look at everything with Barney through like this microscope of like what was wrong, what went wrong, and it's always the park era. But growing up watching those when they were on air as new episodes, it was still Barney to me. And I still love it for that reason as a fan. Speaking of, so you said you came back to Barney, the park era stuff, Riff, but when you talked to your mom, it was about season 3 when you first got introduced to Barney. Do you have a favorite season or a favorite era of Barney that you would say sticks out to you the most, and maybe why it would be that one?
Oh, golly. That's really tough because I think all 3 of the eras of Barney, I think it's safe to say 3, right?
Yeah. 3, maybe sometimes they say 4th generation because with Riff, they consider that a different era.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I could see that. But I think with 3 or 4 eras, I think each one has such a unique spin that it's really hard to say which is my favorite. I mean, first 3 seasons, it's that nostalgia. It's what everybody thinks and knows and hears about with Barney. Whereas these seasons 4 through 6, they get a little bit more polished. They have a little more under their belt. I think the budget probably went up a little bit on the show, and but there's still kind of that charm there. And even what we were just saying with the park era, yeah, it's different voice, different performer, all of that jazz. But I think there's still a lot there that's fun, and there's still quite a bit that there's stuff for Barney fans to get into, I think. So it's really hard to say which era would necessarily be my favorite just because of all of that. Well, and also with the cast of kids for each era. I mean, there are so many times when I was young for the first two generations where basically I consider them kind of like my friends in a way, because when I was a kid, I really didn't have a lot of friends just because of my shy personality, and we didn't really do a whole lot. So to me, I always imagine like being friends not just with Barney and the other dinos, but the kids like Michael and Tina and Lucy and all of them. So
yeah, for sure. I felt that same way. That's another thing that we kind of have in common. I was sort of a shy kid growing up as well. I had siblings close in age with me. I lived at my grandma's daycare, and she had an in-home daycare, so I was around kids all the time. But I spent a lot of time by myself, and in those times, it was watching Barney or acting and imitating Barney, and those kind of things. So all those characters, and I think maybe that's why I didn't necessarily grow out of it, especially living in a daycare where there's always a new generation of kids that then I'm introducing Barney to. So it's like I lived in a daycare where each generation of Barney has been important to some kid, right? The Riff era stuff that people don't like much. My youngest sibling and the cousins around that age grew up in that era. All they know is Barney with Riff, right? Whereas some of the older kids, they grew up in the era before that. So those characters, those dinosaurs, and those kids on that show definitely felt like friends to me as well. When you watch it, even now, I can watch Barney now, and I know that it's a guy in a costume, right? And I know that these people are acting, but there's a certain moment where I watch Barney now with my daughter where it's still, to me, even though I know this is a costume, sometimes I get into this weird space where still to me, those characters are real, you know?
Oh yeah.
When I sit back and think, I go, oh, as an adult, of course they're not real. But when I'm watching it, sometimes I get so lost in it where I see them as actual dinosaurs, and these are actual kids playing with this toy dinosaur that's come to life versus these are just people acting.
Yeah. For a while, I wouldn't necessarily say I stopped her. Let me do that again. I wouldn't necessarily say that I stopped realizing that it was someone in a suit. But there are definitely times, like you just said, and I think too, what I joked about is that, well, I never saw anybody get in and out of Barney, so there must be some realism there. But like you see with like Carol Spinney getting into Big Bird, as cool as that is, and it's people say, oh, that ruins the magic. To me, not necessarily. And even with what I just said about that, I would not be opposed to seeing a shot of Carrie or David or whoever getting into the Barney suit. I've actually wanted that for so long. I wanted to see, because I've always been the person that loves the behind the scenes stuff. Even when I was like 10, 11, 12 years old, I loved watching behind the scenes stuff for my favorite movies and favorite shows, where you get to see people like getting ready for these things, getting ready with their scripts, and like getting into like with Big Bird or stuff like that. So it's kind of been a two-way street for me, but I've always enjoyed that.
Yeah, for sure. Have you and I don't really want we could talk about it if you want to, but have you ever seen the documentary that came out last year, I Love You, You Hate Me?
I have not been able to, just because of different things with the different streaming services and stuff. I have not been able to. Sure. I want to, but I just have not gotten there yet.
I'll see if there's not a way that I can get a clip or something. There's a clip in that documentary of David putting on the season 1 suit. You can see it laying on the ground, and you can see him like pick it up, and he's putting it on. Obviously, far different than how they started to do it later. They didn't just have their costumes laying around as they went on in the years, but in those early years, they apparently did. And there's a video where you can see him pick the suit up and put it on, kind of like that behind the scenes thing that you say you would love to see. That's in that documentary. So I'll see if I can't get one of either Andrew or Kaylin or myself. Maybe we can find a clip of that somewhere and share it in the group. That way you can see that, since you're having trouble being able to watch it because of streaming. So I think you'd really like that, because it was cool. That was one thing that stuck out to me, aside from all the other stuff with the documentary. Seeing things like that, behind the scenes kind of stuff, was one thing that stuck out to me a lot. So I think you would like seeing that. So I'll try to find that for you for sure.
That'd be so cool.
Yeah. Let's see. So we talked about favorite seasons. Do you have a favorite? And I know this can be hard, especially if you grew up with Barney for so long, but do you have a favorite, maybe home video or a favorite song that maybe isn't necessarily like the I Love You song, or that the typical one that people always look at? Is there another one that you might say is one that's always been a favorite of yours?
Yeah. With favorite home video, I definitely have to say Night Before Christmas, I feel, is one of the best videos that the Barney franchise ever put out. The set, the design of everything, the music, for a while as a kid, I didn't like it, but I think I had to get older and just kind of appreciate things a little more. Mm-hmm. But the ending after Hannah's parents get her up to bed after she sings I Love You with Barney.
Yeah.
That kind of slow pan over like to the fireplace, and then everything changing and Santa starts coming down, and then we just cut right to the Barney doll. One of the best probably features I've seen in a Barney video. And I love that. I love Barney's Halloween party. I've always enjoyed that. So a lot of the holiday ones, I think just because they know that it's a holiday one, so they got to pull out a lot of the stops for it.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Those are two really good ones. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But those two are really, really good ones. Obviously, Night Before Christmas is a fan favorite for almost everyone. That one and Waiting for Santa are like top of the list Barney videos. Waiting for Santa, I think it's more so the nostalgia of it all, because it's not that impressive of a video, right?
Right.
But it's the nostalgia of it all, I think, that really, and it being the best-selling Barney video of all time, puts it in that place, and it's a great video. Night Before Christmas is definitely like that Waiting for Santa, but on steroids kind of thing. Like you said, you really have to pull everything out when you do that, and it just felt so different. Being in a different location, someone's home, was something that we didn't really see with Barney towards the later years. Obviously, that was the very early years, being at Michael and Amy's house. But in about that time that movie came out, seeing Barney in a different space, or a space so intimate, such as a family's living room, and then the magic of being at this workshop with Santa and Mrs. Claus, and all that stuff. Yeah, and then just the way that it ends is so. It's almost like a chef's kiss. It's just like so perfect, of like the way they share that song. Barney sings "I Love You" to Hannah as she sleeps, and that it just feels magical. It feels very Christmas, and I think that's why it sticks out so much to people. So both of those are very, very good choices. Yeah. Let's see here. Have you ever had a chance to see Barney live at all?
I did, actually. So so when I was younger, unfortunately, I was going to show a picture, but unfortunately it stuck to a huge old baby book, so I didn't really want to try that out. Sure. But I do have pictures of, I saw Big Surprise, which, as much as I appreciate Live in New York City for the highlight, cream of the crop that it was for the franchise at the time, I wasn't so fond of the plot. That's just my personal opinion. Yeah. But like I said, I appreciate for what it was for the franchise at the time. But also, like I said, Big Surprise, I saw that when I was young, when I was touring around. And then I saw Musical Castle as well. But like I said, I think, what's actually really funny is, again, a little bit of a tangent, but Musical Castle, the video for that was filmed in Rosemont, Illinois. Cool. And which is not too far from my house.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, I shouldn't say not too far. It's at least a couple hours drive, but still relatively close.
Still pretty close, yeah.
Yeah. What's funny is a few years ago, my family and I went and saw the Wiggles live in Rosemont. So, and my brother, when we walked in, he saw the auditorium and everything, and he immediately recognized that it was from Barney's Musical Castle.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool. I want to take it back just a little bit about what you said about live in New York City. Um, I I appreciate your opinion on that video from the standpoint of being a kid who grew up um, in that era somewhat, right? And being able to criticize it a little bit.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, some of us fans, we're so nostalgic about the old stuff that nothing seems wrong, right? Um, like you said, Live in New York City was a very great pillar in the history of what Barney was, selling out that place for however many weeks it was, in a matter of minutes, right? um um Being able to use that space in Radio City with Barney being so young at the time in the public eye, all of those things are amazing. Steve White has said it before, writing that specific show, he had a matter of a couple of weeks, I think it was.
Mm.
They booked the place out and then they wrote it, and then even things still changed. Like adding the Winkster was a character that Cheryl Leach and those guys added. Steve White is not fond of it still to this day. And it wasn't a character that he originally had in the show and that kind of thing. So it did have its flaws, even though some great show, top of the line for what Barney was at that time. It did have some of those flaws, the plot being one of them. It was more of just like a medley of songs, not so much of an actual show. When you get to Big Surprise and obviously every show after that, scratch Birthday Bash, um those are you got to see an actual adventure of what we were used to with Barney, and there's a plot and why are we here, what's the issue we have to solve, and all those things. And it's touring, right? So it's even bigger than what Live in New York City was. So you respect Live in New York City because, like you said, it was the epitome of what Barney was at the time in 94, 95. I think it was 94 when they did it.
Yeah.
Radio City Music Hall, the idea, the Barney magic of it all, of I don't know if you've ever known this, but they never got a chance to completely rehearse that show.
Oh yeah, I do
um
remember hearing that.
yeah, so like the craziness of the first time we've ever been able to perform this show from beginning to end is when we're in front of an audience. That's a scary. I'm an actor and I've had that happen before, and it's a scary thing because you're like, okay, well, I hope that we can make it through this thing because we haven't done it without people staring at us. Now we have this entire audience staring at us, and we have to do this show, and they pull it off. All that stuff is amazing. But when you bring in a show like Big Surprise and it's on tour and it's these giant sets and uh, new characters and all these different changing
And
sets
Barry
and
Pearl is Tinker Butt.
yeah, you can't go wrong with Barry Pearl either. So like they definitely stepped it up, which is what they were supposed to do, of course. But I think it's cool that you got a chance to see those. I never had a chance. Our family couldn't afford to see Barney live. I think the only time he came close was uh, when they went on tour for the Let's Go tour, and
Mm,
Riff was with them. He
yeah.
came. He came to. I live in Omaha, Nebraska, so he came to Lincoln, Nebraska, which is 45 minutes from where I live. Um, and I wanted my mom to take me and my younger sister at the time. I think she was like 2 or 3, and we just couldn't afford it.
Mm.
So the only time I got to see Barney live was the birthday bash, which was the end of it all, and it obviously wasn't that great of a show. I
Yeah.
like the changes,
Right.
so I like the remix music and all that stuff for
Oh
what it
yeah.
was. But I really, really, really wish, especially a show like Let's Go Tour, that we didn't even get to see formulate onto a DVD. I kind of feel cheated. I wish I would have been able to see that. So it's cool that you've had that chance to see 2 of those shows.
Mhm.
That's really exciting that you've had that opportunity.
Yeah,
Uh,
my brother went to the Let's Go tour, but that was at a point when I was still kind of in that funk of not doing anything with Barney. But I do
sure.
remember talking to one of my folks while we were, because my one parent went with my brother and the other parent, I went shopping with them, and I
Mhm.
said, oh, I really get to, wish I could have been, kind of could have gone all that, and they're like, nah. I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah. Um, okay, let's see here. So another question that I have is, you left the show, you came back, kind of now you're like you're in your 20s, right? You said?
yeah.
Yeah. Why are you a fan? Like, why Barney? Why are you a fan now? Why is and I guess it's 2 questions that I have. Why are you a fan now? Why is Barney specifically so special to you today in this moment?
Mhm. I think nostalgia has one big part in that. I just remember loving the show and just kind of coming around. I'm one of those weird young adults where most of my favorite shows are actually kids shows.
Of course.
I still prefer to like watch Barney. It's funny because I tell people, I said, you know, in my house, beyond there were other shows, but the main favorite shows in my house were the 3 Bs: Barney, Blue's Clues, and Bear in the Big Blue House.
Nice.
Yeah, so
That's awesome.
yeah. But yeah, so I think a lot of that has to do with it, and just preferring to watch Barney over some of the stuff that's on TV nowadays.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
go
kid-wise
ahead.
and adult-wise, but
Yeah.
yeah, and I think it's just kind of that comfort food without being food kind of thing. Especially like when I'm going through a rough time. I remember, even when it's not like life-changing or traumatic or anything, I can remember when I was a senior in high school, and I didn't really enjoy being a senior in high school because I knew it meant that I had to move away, and I wasn't going to be able to do a lot of things that I liked being able to do at home. And I was getting ready for prom, and I remember just kind of becoming emotional where I actually played the Duncan Brandon version of why am I blanking on the name of the song? Oh my gosh. The one that Julie sings to the puppy.
Yeah, Someone to Love You Forever.
Someone to Love You Forever. That literally just popped into my head.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I played that, and I hung on to my Barney stuffy that did survive the time of getting rid of my Barney stuff when I was younger. And I remember just sobbing and just kind of not necessarily having a mental breakdown, but just kind of having that moment of just like, I really don't want to grow up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting that you say that. Someone to Love You Forever is one of my absolute favorite songs.
Oh yeah.
I wish they would have used it more in the series. Dean did a very good job of that song for Birthday Bash.
Yeah.
I don't think people give him enough credit because he didn't really sing much, right? After the first couple years, he stopped singing on the show and he did more of that talk thing.
Yeah.
But he did a really good job with Someone to Love You Forever on Birthday Bash. And it's such a sentimental song. So I can see why that would be a song that you play. You just kind of have that moment. I think we all go through that as we start to get older, because I think we start to realize the world that we see it as children is far different from the world that we see when we become adults, right? And so we cling. I think we cling to things, and sometimes as adults we subconsciously do it, but we cling to things that just that mean something to us, whether it's from our childhood or it's a specific person. And so I never had that moment where it was like, oh, I don't want to grow up and that kind of thing like you did. But you do often think about that, like, oh man, now so many things change. It's not the way the world appears to be through a child's eyes. And so it's cool that you at least you got to have that moment, though, and a time where Barney was in a sense there for you during that moment. That's what that character, I think, is that's what he stands for. That's what he means, right? We talked about changes in Barney and how you appreciated the Park era and the Riff era and all that stuff as much as you still appreciate the classic stuff. I'm about to not talk about this outside of this podcast, and so let's talk about it just real quick. Do you have any sort of hope when it comes to, obviously we have this new character that's showing up. He's still Barney to like the world, but we have this new show that's Barney's World that's supposed to appear with us next year, and we're starting to see bits of information formulate for these things. How do you feel? What do you feel about this show? Have you had any type of thoughts on it or opinions on it, or yeah?
Literally, I've just been pulling that face about every new announcement. I'm just like, oh, what are they doing to you, Barney?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I can see where they're coming from. I mean, it's kind of the trend out there right now, is to bring back a favorite in different mediums, whether that be in movies or TV or kids TV, stuff like that. When I first saw the shot of the animated figure, literally, I think out loud I went, ugh. Literally, I think I did that out loud when I first saw that. Yeah, because it was so jarring, and I almost want to take the step and say it was appalling. And the reason I say that is because I remember it could have been through the group, it could have been somewhere else that I was reading on this, how Cheryl and company were very adamant in not having the characters be animated. I mean, obviously they had some animated work for like logos and the CD-ROM games and stuff like that, which is funny. Tangent for just a second with talking about animated Barney and things. The CD-ROM games, I had the farm game when I was a kid.
Oh, really?
And yeah, I didn't mind it so much, other than when Barney would all of a sudden pop up in that little like circle.
Yeah.
Scared the crap out of me. I hated it so much. Like, so much it got to a point where I would like cover the screen whenever I knew he was about to pop up. So, and for me, like going through that and the CGI Barney that came off in Come Over to Barney's House, that was a little yikes. So to me, animated Barney has never worked. And even before I saw that thing that Cheryl and them had said in the past, I never felt that Barney worked in animation. So with them doing this now with CGI animation, and just there's so much of things that have been kind of tweaked around and modernized in a sense for this show, I'm very nervous.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be respectful and all that, but I'm so nervous about it. And yeah, I don't know what else to say, but I'm trying to stay positive about it. I'm not quite a fan of changing BJ's name. I can kind of see why, but I'm also not a huge fan of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I'm very scared to see his and Baby Pop's design.
You know, so am I. I won't say much on it. I don't talk about it much. I'm also not a fan of BJ's name change. Like you said, we're adults, so we all, I believe, understand why. But we understand why because we're adults, right? As kids, those kind of ideas don't cross our minds. And so if I feel like if we're making a show for children, make the show for children, right? I have a 2-year-old daughter who obviously did not grow up with Barney, but is a huge fan of Barney today. And I know seeing when she saw the anime, I showed her the picture of the animated Barney, and the first thing she said was Barney. So to a young child who sees this character, albeit all these different designs that they've decided to go with that we're not fond of, those young kids like her still see that character that they love. The thing that I don't like about BJ's name is if they know about the classic Barney stuff, seeing this character that's supposed to be the same person but a different name will kind of throw them off a little bit. I think it can work if done correctly. If done with the right respect that Barney deserves. Obviously, them sourcing it to Canada, we lose the opportunity for any of the original people to come in. But I don't think that we need the original people to make a great show. We just need people who understand Barney. I know how we can look at that picture, and that's the only thing that we have so far, and just this blanket synopsis that really means nothing right now. And kind of go, these guys have no idea what they're doing. But when that show comes out, there is a chance still there, even though probably very slim, that these guys who have this brand will do it justice, even though it's different from what we're used to. And so that's what I'm holding out hope for, that at least they changing certain things and looks and things like that is one thing. But if they can keep the core of who Barney is in this animated world, the love and the learning that Barney taught, I would be okay with it. And I think it's very important. We've always talked about as Barney fans, Barney coming back today for kids because we
Mhm.
need Barney today. I think if they do Barney in the right way, I welcome him back in no matter what the form is, as long as kids today get that character like we got to experience that character. And 20 years from now, hopefully they look back, whether it's at that animated show or the classic stuff, and go, Barney did this for me, just like he's done for us so far. So that's what
Mhm.
I'm hoping for. Anything can happen. Uh, and all the little bit of random things we've gotten so far gives us no hope. And that's why I'm hoping as we start to see more, something formulates that shows that it turns out to be a good show.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
We'll
they
see.
did well enough with the new Blue's Clues show. I've been very impressed with how they've done with that. So,
Yeah,
and they
yeah,
made a lot of that in Canada. So,
they did. I auditioned for that show.
did you really?
Yeah, and I thought it would be. That's why I don't know if you know, but I have my own TV show that I do
Oh,
called
okay,
Mr. K's
yeah.
Clubhouse. And the one of the main reasons why I started it, aside from the fact, like you mentioned way earlier, how there's not much TV today that's actually any good for kids,
Mhm.
was because I auditioned for Blue's Clues and I didn't get it. And I was just like, all right, well, I'll just create my own show, kind of as a joke, and then I did. But yeah, when I auditioned for Blue's Clues, I had already seen the drawing figure of like the new CGI Blue and all of that stuff before they made it obviously public. And I thought it was going to be something vastly different than what it was. I like that it's primarily the exact same show that it's always been.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
just a new host, a new look for Blue that's not too jarring like you're saying that they did with Barney. They could have done it with Barney where he looks like Barney looked, just CGI, whether it's still kind of off-putting or not. They could have done that without the crazy changes. Um, but I like that at least with Blue's Clues and You, they've kept that formula that worked for them, and they just kept going in that direction.
Yeah.
It's easier for them to do live action though because you think, okay, it's only one live action person with
Right.
everything else on a green screen, and then maybe three people if you bring in Steve and Joe. But
Mhm.
outside of that, it's just Josh running around on a green screen. That's a lot easier to do with a live action person than a full costume of 4 dinosaurs, all these kids, and
Right.
so I can see why they would go the animated route for that. Um, I'm holding out hope that hopefully something good comes from it.
Yeah.
Um, but you never really know.
Mhm.
Um, before we finish up here today, one thing that we always do on this podcast is I always ask our guests to bring a Barney item that sticks out maybe the most to them, that really means something to them, and then we have them show that. So this would be the time that you can show us what item you've brought, and then just kind of explain why you've brought that item and what that means to you.
Yeah, so I actually brought 2 different items. It was kind of hard with what I've gotten all that because I originally was gonna try and get my stuffies and all that, but I have like 3 of them, and I really didn't want to take time to explain all 3 of them.
Sure.
But I brought a couple different things. So the first one is actually I was able to have my party with Barney done.
Nice.
Yeah. My folks had that had a picture of me sent off, and we were able to get that done and all that. It's held up pretty well over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I still enjoy watching it. It used to be a thing when I was younger. I would watch it every year on my birthday because it's about having a birthday party.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I still have it. I try to keep it as pristine as I can. I'm trying to see
Mhm.
about getting it like in a digital form and all that, so I can preserve it a
Yeah.
little better.
Yeah,
But yeah, I love having that. And to me, it just means a little more than any old stuffy. I mean, the stuffies still mean something to me, but having that and having your face there with Barney has always been something that I found pretty cool.
for sure. Awesome.
Yeah, then the second thing that I got is so this was actually a more recent purchase of a few years ago.
Mhm.
When I was living in my first apartment on my own and all that, I was actually going around on eBay and I found this picture of Barney from Radio City. It was like a
Oh,
postcard
cool.
or something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah, and it's not like signed or anything, but I can't really see on the bottom there, but it says something about Barney Live in New York City and who did the photography and stuff.
That's
But
wonderful.
yeah, but the ringmaster costume for Barney has always been one of my favorites that Barney's always worn. So to find this, and I just love this pose. It's so Barney to me.
Yeah.
It's just so Barney. But I saw it on eBay and I bought it, and like you see, I had it framed, and I actually had it on the wall of my apartment for while I was there.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was really cool just to have that, and like I said, just as an adult, have something like that for Barney.
That's a really, really beautiful picture. I'm glad that you got to get that. It's funny that you showed My Party with Barney, because I was going to ask you if you ever had the chance to get that video. And I'm glad I didn't, because it would have almost kind of ruined what you had. So it's cool that you had that. I had the same thing. My case, it's back here on this show. My case did not hold up as well as yours did at all. The video is still great, but the case is not as good of a condition as yours. So you should be proud of that. You did a really good job preserving that so far. But yeah, it's really cool. I like both of those items. Like you said with the My Party with Barney, that one is a little different, because even though it's not you in the video, your picture being on that character makes you feel like you're there. And so it's one of those things that you do kind of hold a little bit closer to you when it comes to a Barney video than just one of the standard ones, because it's personalized for you, right? This character that you love and enjoy is saying your name. You see your face alongside the other characters. It's a really cool thing. So I'm glad you got the opportunity to have that. I think they still print those now in DVD form, if I'm not mistaken. So it's cool that they still do that. Yeah.
And one thing, it's not a physical thing that came to my mind as well, if I can really quick. Like I said, it's not a physical item, but it was something recent that I was able to do for my brother. Like I said, he's also a pretty big Barney fan. He mainly sticks to the first 3 seasons. Not that he doesn't like the other airs and stuff. He still plays that, but like on his computer here at home, he always loves watching those episodes and play different ones. And then there are times where he'll even want to play out some of the bits from the episodes.
Oh, sure.
He loves Camera Safari from the 3rd season. He loves that episode.
Yeah.
And one time for Easter, he requested a safari hat and vest just like Barney's. And so then his birthday later that year, I was able to do a cameo with Bob West and get Bob West to wish him happy birthday and all that. And I mentioned that in the little notes there. And Bob, with his little Barney stuffy that he has, in the Barney voice, was able to talk to my brother about all of that.
That's awesome. You have to love Bob. That's so special. I did a cameo with Bob also. Before my daughter was born, my stepdaughter, it was her birthday, and so Bob was able to mention with Barney like the effect of her being a big sister and all those things. So it's really, cameo is a great thing to have, and being able to have someone like Bob West, who is so inviting and so welcoming and willing to interact with his fans to the magnitude that he does. I think we always have to show respect, but also just gratitude for him for wanting to do that. So that's awesome that you were able to do that for him.
Yeah, and I think go along with that, just there's so many people in the Barney community that were in the show that are so willing to do things for fans nowadays. I mean, that's kind of, again, it's become the trend. Nostalgia is a trend, I think, is definitely a phrase nowadays.
Yeah.
But even ones like Carrie Stinson with his 2 podcasts that he did. I mean, just as much as I love David Joyner, and he's still, number 1 there for Barney performers, I really grew to love Carrie Stinson because of the stories that he told on his podcasts about his time when he was Barney and the things that he got to see and he got to experience and everything.
For sure.
And and I was also very, very thankful that he was willing to take user questions on, I think it was Purple Tales, when he did questions, and he actually took one of my questions.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that was awesome. It was really cool. It was funny because it was actually the episode after they did their Q&A. It was when he had that the other gal with him. I don't remember her name right now.
Yeah.
But she was like, "Oh yeah, we got a question that we missed from the Q&A." And then she mentioned my name and said that I had a couple of questions related to Barney. So
it's awesome. That's really cool that you got a chance to do that. I've grown a little closer with Carrie because of my show. I've been on his podcast twice, and then we did a fan one, and it was supposed to be a continuing thing, but we only did my episode and that was it. But yeah, he's an amazing person. That's the only thing that I wish would happen more though with Carrie and Dean, those later guys, is I wish they would interact a little bit more with fans, because there is a generation of kids out there who are young adults now that grew up with specifically them, and we get this opportunity to interact with Bob and Steve White and Bob Singleton and David Joyner sometimes, and Fred Holmes, all these wonderful people that worked on the show, but not so much you get a chance to talk directly to Dean Wint ever. Dean Wint just kind of is like gone in the wind.
He's kind of disappeared after Barney.
Yeah, he's there, but you just don't see him much. And so I wish that they would interact, because there are people around that would appreciate their presence and that conversation. I'm going to try to twist Carrie's arm a little bit and see if I can get him into this group. It hasn't been working so far, but yeah. I'm optimistic. So we'll see. Before we close this out, Sarah, what's one thing that Barney has taught you that you can say has stuck with you to this day, in this moment? Or is there a lyric or anything, one thing that just sticks with you from Barney?
I think if anything, it's how welcoming Barney is to people. I mean, even if it's people that you do not agree with what they do and things like that, I've always kind of been a person that has reached out like to the outsider, to kind of that one kid in the lunchroom that nobody wants to talk to, that kind of idea. I don't know if that's always just been a part of me or if it came from Barney or kind of a mixture of both. But just kind of being there for somebody when they need it. I think has a lot of it.
For sure. I love that. Yeah, Barney's his personality and what he stands for, I think it's in all of us anyway. You don't need Barney to teach you that, but Barney brings that out of you. I think we all have it, but if we're not shown how to exercise kindness or love for others or those kind of things, like there are some adults now or even some kids, you kind of lose those things. You know, it was a joke in season 11. They did the manners episode where Barney told Baby Bob, if you don't use those words, they start to get old and rusty. And then Corey, she couldn't say those words.
Yeah.
However we feel about those old episodes, that was a very good lesson, because there's a lot of adults and some kids now who those words aren't old and rusty. They just have not said them or used them. That now it's like an afterthought. Like if you tell them, well, can you say please or thank you? It's like pulling teeth. They really can't say them because they just can't fathom this idea of being kind, right? So I think we all benefit from having a character like Barney, where some of his characteristics have stuck with us throughout life, and then we can pass those on to other people. So I love that's what's stuck with you and helped you. I do want to say thank you for we're going to close it out before we run too long, but I want to say thank you for taking the chance to come on here. Talking with you about your experience with Barney and all those things has been amazing. I hope you've had a good time.
Oh yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, we'll have to, as we start cycling through people and get further down, bring you back and we dive deeper into some things that maybe we didn't get a chance to talk about today. But I'm really appreciative of you coming on here, so thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you so much. I loved it.
Yeah. For everyone else, thank you for tuning in. I hope you appreciated this episode with Sarah. Like I said, keep an eye out for many more episodes that are becoming very soon with some other amazing people that you won't want to miss. And then who knows, maybe we'll see you here in your spot of love soon. Take care.